Hello and welcome. My name is Mary Cummins, and today I'm going to be continuing with the book Fuel, my reaction to Chapter 8, which is The Loss of the Prison. I'm going to start out by talking about nature versus nurture. If you think about when you were born as a little baby, were you predisposed towards love or toward fear? And then on the nurture side, in particular, the power parent, did they reinforce the love aspects of your temperament or the fear aspects? And what we see with Tudor is that he was born with a predisposition towards evil, which would say that in many of his incarnations he chose the evil side. And then his power parent was his mother, and his mother didn't really have a heart connection, and so she trained him to be a superior being. So he had to suppress any weakness or any shame in his child self, which he called the creature. We see that he built a construct which is similar to a social mask that any of us would wear. This construct was built to hide any weaknesses that he had in his child self. The construct then is the prison, imprisoning his weaker side. And what we see in interpersonal relationships, we also see out in organizations that tell us that they are looking out for our best interests and going to do something good for us, are often lying to us. And how do we get entangled with something that we don't really agree with, that's something that doesn't go along with our values? I'm going to show how we can make a choice to stand for our values and not reinforce the negativity on the planet. The loss of the prison. H.G. Tudor's child self, his so-called quote-unquote creature within, is confined in an imprisoning construct of the very fuel that he says he takes because he is superior, when in fact he fears losing control of this creature, as it would expose his child self that he was trained to sacrifice on the altar of pride. The construct is the constant repetition of this sacrifice, where any childlike empathy that he may have had as a very little boy was crushed out of him. With the creation of narcissists, we know that the optimal crucible of that creation is where the past life nature, genetic neural predilection, is given the fertile ground of negative nurturance. H.G. Tudor thus is the exact product of this conscienceless early childhood, where negative nature combines with negative nurture. So any need of that little boy within was seen as a controlling tyrant by his power parent, and he was punished into controlling its needs by finding the negative nurturance of fuel from others, who were foolish enough to give up their fuel. So in other words, what Tudor's mother did to him, he carried on doing to himself. He copied her, copying others. As without compassion, emotional reactions are always off target. It took his mother and his uncle time to polish their copied emotional reactions and then to use them to get fuel from others. From his mother, he learned to steal fuel covertly, but from his uncle, he learned to take it overtly. Like them, any behavior that he deems to be top-notch, he copies from those around him, and then uses that behavior to induce an image and presence of superiority. He builds the confining construct in a frantic fashion, copying people's emotional responses of superiority. He then acts out these responses with such an intensity that others either admire him, fear him, or just get out of the way and give him his way. He will choose beauty from a neighbor that he admires and adapts to increase his glamour. Likewise, sophistication from an artistic friend, charm from an elder statesman, or humor from a comedian. This he does with great attention to vocal tone, physical body language, and facial expression. He has to do this, as he has no internal cues, as he feels nothing but the two spikes of pride and shame. The one he relentlessly pursues, and the other he ruthlessly avoids. He is constantly burying this helpless child within, with all the mocking ridicule and fear that he was trained to use against it when he was it. Tudor has said in one of his interviews that he was sexually abused. This may be so, and abused he was for sure, but the person he is now is only using it as leverage to induce an empathy/sympathy that he can use as a toehold to get into the flow of fuel from those who are attending to his words. He talks about the creature within escaping. It causes extreme fear. We can well believe that he suffered this helplessness as a child. Early on, the constructs had gaps in it, so that the creature would hiss and shout and break off parts of the prison with quote-unquote scrabbling claw or scrawny arm. The scrawny arm shows that this is his child self and shows that he knows it. It is an ongoing battle to keep the creature locked up, and how the fearful features of the creature with the quote-unquote hollow eyes would get him to lash out at those around him, demanding their reactions as fuel, to calm the rising stress in his chest and his pounding heart. His childhood sounds like a nightmare. It was so bad that he closed off his feelings and sought to become dead inside. This is the lot of those who have followed the path of consciencelessness for many lifetimes. This is the fallen angel resort when they found themselves cut off from God and his light. They realized they had to steal that light now. And they seen how the children of God were so eager and foolish that they would just give it away. It was not long before they noticed, as Tudor has said, that the fuel of love and admiration is pleasant enough, but the real thick sirloin steak of fuel is misery, and this they set out to induce without having to make an effort. So the very top narcissists made sure that everyone beneath them would loosh themselves of fuel and pass a portion of that fuel to the top of their pyramid of control. So we loosh when we're in these negative momentums, when we go into fear or go into doubt, we're automatically producing this fuel that they can use. H.G. Tudor is indeed a victim who proclaims himself an ultra-victimizer. These are the lies that the controlling lackeys of this world tell themselves and sell to each other. We are slowly but surely in the process of seeing through this diabolical rape of our light, which is God's light. And when we see through this, we will see to it that it never happens again anywhere. The creature is the same in all of these lackeys, a composite of all of his weaknesses from a fallen angel perspective. His fear of humiliation, every failure, fear, shame, disappointment, irritation, frailty, frustration, and every shortcoming is contained within the creature that he was made to loathe, his real self. He is searing and sealing his emotions to make sure that any conscience that he may have had, along with his soul, is walled off. He is then able to relate to the world in a mechanical way, that is, without involving his soul, while at the same time irrigating fuel by appearing to be caring but superior. Empaths pick up the emotional truth almost all without understanding the underlying manipulation and end up sympathizing. From a truly empathic position, this thing is tragic, meaning being abused. It is most unpleasant and should never happen to anyone. He is willing to use anything, even the truth, to get fuel. And we as empaths have to see this manipulation and find a way to do what is just, in spite of the manifold intentions and ways that narcissism seeks to use and abuse us. With God and true understanding, we can end this victimization. For we are not victims, but those learning to love only that which is real. In Viktor Frankl's book, quote unquote, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl stated in describing conditions in the Nazi camp that, quote, it is apparent that the mere knowledge that a man was either a camp guard or a prisoner tells us almost nothing. Human kindness can be found in all groups, even those which, as a whole, it would be easy to condemn. End of quote. He described a camp commander who never once lifted his hand against any of the prisoners. And then prisoners who were sadistic, even against their own group, once they got a little power. Mostly they were chosen by the guards because they were sadistic. And today, we know that in every corporation and organization, it is these types who rise to the very top. Gareth Icke of Iconic recently talked about the medical assistance in dying. It's known as the MAID program, M-A-I-D, Medical Assistance in Dying, that was adopted in Canada. And he said that the real reason behind this multi-billion-dollar industry is organ harvesting. It's ODE, organ donor euthanasia. Whether it is in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, or Britain, it is about ODE. And now people are signed up to be organ donors, even without their knowledge. It is a system where vulnerable, decent people can be coerced into assisted suicide. Icke has evidence to support this claim and personally interviewed a 40-year-old guy in, he thought it was 2020 or 2021, who had a benign tumor. He had 2 kids, and the receptionist, when he would turn up at the hospital, suggested 3 different times that he might choose assisted suicide. Another example was a victim of a motorcycle accident where one man who was declared, quote-unquote, brain dead in hospital. However, his brother refused to let them take his organs, and that man is now a father. People who have mental problems like depression are also coerced to put an end to it. Their healthy organs can be passed on to the wealthy. These ones without a conscience prey on good people, as they did with COVID, where you needed to protect the vulnerable, the elderly, the ones with weakened immune systems. No decent person wants to hurt Granny, and we think, well, maybe it's not about me. And you go along with the program. We get hooked into an outright lie. It has nothing to do with the story they are telling us. Their own fear pushes them to dominate and crush the spirit of freedom within the people because they fear the independent spirit. Like Viktor Frankl suggests, and in Matthew 10:16 it says, quote. Be ye therefore wise as serpents, harmless as doves, end of quote. Knowing this, we cannot be naive and must stay alert to the intentions of evil. I've talked earlier about the Anunnaki girl and would now like to show one of their hybrids who was interviewed by Linda Moulton Howe and tells how she made a conscious choice to say no to participating in a genetic manipulation program where she was told that she had made a choice at higher levels and was threatened into agreeing.
I decided that I do not want to be part of the gray breeding program because I believe humanity can evolve naturally, organically, without genetic manipulation from one specific gray species. So there was a point in my life in which I said no. And so many people came to me and said, well, you made an agreement, you know this knowledge, you know that you on a higher level agreed to this, so there's a soul contract. Now you have to experience and grow past that and accept it. And I said no. You know why? Because we are in constant creation. We are creators. We are creator beings. We are in constant control of our own life. We are responsible for our own existence and our own creations and the creation of our reality. So we have the rights to say, I no longer agree with this agreement. I no longer agree with this soul contract. I want to change it. I want to break it. You can do it because you are sovereign, you're free, you are from source. Everyone is at the same level. Nobody should be on top of you. So I responded to them that actually you can't change it. It is possible because you are creator too. So there needs to be less spiritual bypassing in the community and more understanding that we need to get to that phase of rebellion as a whole species and say, we are sovereign, we can say no, we can recreate contracts in the now moment because the power of creation lies in the now moment.
Here's a quote from John Cleese. It says, quote, the objective of every adult male Englishman is to go from the cradle to the grave without ever experiencing humiliation. End of quote. Like Tudor, we all endeavor to hide our wounded self and any type of humiliation. We put on pretend masks that we present to the world. And yet, it is important for all of us to process these weaknesses and fears, as it is often what gets us in trouble and makes us susceptible to the outright manipulator, as described by Tudor, and even the small-time manipulator like a mechanic, salesmen or women, and many other service providers. Consensual reality sets up a perfection mechanism that no one can live up to. Yet in dealing with our fragmented aspects and humiliation, we may look awkward while processing it. But it is well worth it if we stay centered in our heart brain. They tried to humiliate even the Master Jesus, and for a time it might have looked like the evil was winning. But did he not rise in the resurrection to a greater glory? We all have a choice to make. We can see the humiliation as a humbling that keeps us compassionate. And now we come to the conclusion. An older version of the Tudor character is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This novel was published by a Scottish writer, Robert Louis Stevenson, in 1886. It describes two alter egos of the main character, who displayed wildly different behavior between his public and private self. Dr. Jekyll had developed a potion to separate the good and evil aspects of his personality. Dr. Jekyll then did not feel responsible for Mr. Hyde's atrocities. Dr. Jekyll's potion is similar to Tudor's construct, built to hide any wrongdoing. There is no integration, no learning, through acknowledging or overcoming of the negative self, and no building of character. The mild-mannered Dr. Jekyll, then, was not to be trusted, as he lived a double life, where he not only denied, but hid Mr. Hyde. Like him, we cannot trust H.G. Tudor's seemingly good will. It's his fake Dr. Jekyll, for it is all learned artifice, and his real Dr. Jekyll is the walled-off conscience of the child creature that he confines within. It is time for empaths to break the contract with the hive mind that was set up by those who see us as their food. Having compassion for self and refraining from snap judgments of others, we can overcome and have the courage in the moment of choice to do what is right despite the consequences. We can process and transform those moments of pain and trauma into personal strength and wisdom and free ourselves, as the Anunnaki girl did. She tells us we are sovereign and can choose in the now moment. Again, one of the easiest ways to do this is through the 10-day Vipassana meditation retreats given by S.N. Goenka, who teaches us to tune into body sensations and pain that is held in the fascia within the framework of our own bodies. It is a method that takes time and is difficult in its own way, but I have found that the carnal mind and dweller on the threshold, the saboteur within, is less able to thwart our efforts to change when focusing only on the breath and observing the pain and trauma rather than reacting to it. The pitfalls that do arise are clearly defined by S.N. Goenka and easier to avoid once you're aware of them. Experiencing how the trauma within just releases when we choose the middle way of the Buddha is something that builds character and awareness of how the manipulator within is what ties us to the manipulator without. This understanding builds true freedom through experience. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you again for the next chapter. Bye-bye for now.